I worked the overnight shift at a small gas station just off the interstate, the kind of place truckers stopped at when they were running on caffeine and stubbornness. The store was surrounded by nothing but empty road and dark fields that stretched farther than the headlights could reach. Between midnight and dawn, time moved differently there. Minutes dragged, hours blurred, and the hum of the refrigerators became the loudest thing in my world. I liked it that way. The quiet felt safe, predictable. Most nights, I spent my time restocking shelves, wiping down the counter, and watching the security monitor flick between grainy black and white angles of the empty lot outside. Around 3:17 a.m., the phone behind the counter rang. It startled me so badly I dropped the mop. No one ever called the station at night. The caller ID just read, "out of area." I answered, expecting a prank or maybe a lost customer asking for directions. Instead, there was only breathing on the other end. Slow, uneven, like someone trying not to be heard. I asked if they needed help. The breathing stopped. After a few seconds of silence, the line went dead. I told myself it was nothing, but when I looked up at the security monitor, I noticed something new. A car parked at the very edge of the lot, just beyond the reach of the lights. I was certain it hadn't been there a moment earlier. I watched the screen, waiting for someone to step out, but nothing moved. The car's engine wasn't running, no headlights, just a dark shape crouched in the shadows. I tried to focus on my work, but every few minutes my eyes drifted back to the monitor. At 3:41 a.m., the phone rang again. Same caller ID. This time, when I answered, a voice spoke, quiet, strained, like it was being forced through clenched teeth. It said my name. I hadn't introduced myself earlier. My chest tightened as I demanded to know who it was. The voice replied, "I'm already here. You just won't look hard enough." The lights inside the store flickered once, then steadied. I grabbed the bat from under the counter and walked toward the glass doors, peering into the lot. The car was gone. In its place were wet footprints leading from the darkness straight up to the entrance, stopping inches from the door. They were too large, too deep, as if whatever made them was far heavier than any person. The phone rang a third time, but this time it didn't come from behind the counter. It came from somewhere inside the store. I turned slowly, heart hammering, and saw the office phone blinking red. Voicemail. On the security monitor, the camera behind the counter switched on by itself. The screen showed me standing there, staring at the office door. And behind me, reflected faintly in the glass, was someone else, waiting patiently for the shift to end. I took the night shift at a distribution warehouse on the outskirts of town because it paid better and because I liked being alone. The building sat miles away from the nearest neighborhood, surrounded by empty fields and a chain-link fence that rattled when the wind picked up. During the day, the place was loud and chaotic, forklifts, radios, shouting, but at night it felt like a hollow shell. My job was simple: monitor the cameras, do hourly patrols, log anything unusual, and make sure the doors stayed locked until the morning crew arrived. I'd been doing it for nearly 6 months without incident, and I trusted the routine enough to stop being nervous. That changed on a Tuesday around 1:40 a.m. I was halfway through my shift, sipping burnt coffee in the security office, when one of the camera feeds flickered. It was camera 12, the far loading bay that hadn't been used in years. The image warped for a second, then stabilized. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen. At first, I thought nothing was wrong. The bay was empty, just concrete floor and a row of closed doors. Then I noticed something subtle. The motion sensor icon was active. According to the system, something was moving in that bay. I rewound the footage. On playback, the floor looked empty, but the sensor triggered again and again, like something invisible was pacing back and forth just out of view. I told myself it was a glitch. Old building, old wiring. Still, I logged it and grabbed my flashlight before starting my patrol early. The warehouse at night had a sound all its own. Metal popping as it cooled, the distant hum of generators, the echo of my own footsteps stretching too far down empty aisles. As I approached the unused loading bay, the air felt colder, heavier, like I'd stepped into a walk-in freezer. My flashlight beam swept across the floor, the walls, the doors. Nothing. But the deeper I went, the more uneasy I felt, like I was interrupting something that had been waiting for privacy. When I turned to leave, I heard it. Footsteps that weren't mine. They echoed from somewhere behind the stacked pallets, slow and deliberate, matching my pace, but stopping when I stopped. I called out, identifying myself, my voice sounding thin in the open space. No response, just silence that felt too intentional. I backed away, never turning my back until I was nearly running. When I reached the security office and slammed the door shut, my hands were shaking. On the monitors, camera 12 was dark. Not static, not frozen, just black, as if something had covered the lens from the inside. At 3 a.m., the radio crackled. No one was supposed to be on site with me. A voice came through, distorted but unmistakably human. It said, "You missed a spot." I demanded to know who it was, but the radio only hissed in reply. I checked the logs. No incoming transmissions, no alerts. Every camera except one showed empty corridors. Camera 7, pointed at the main aisle, showed me sitting in the office and someone standing just outside the door, close enough that their breath fogged the glass. I didn't move, neither did they. After a full minute, the figure stepped back and vanished into the darkness between shelves. Morning came eventually, pale and ordinary. The day supervisor found me still in the office, lights on, logs perfectly filled out. I quit that same day without explaining why. A week later, I got a call from the company asking about something strange. According to their records, someone had been clocking in on the night shift for years before I was hired. Always alone, always logged in as present, even on nights when the building was supposedly empty. The name on the file wasn't mine, but the handwriting in the incident logs was identical. I worked the late-night shift as a cleaner in a regional hospital, the kind that never truly sleeps but feels eerily close to it after midnight. Most of the staff were gone by then, doctors reduced to a skeleton crew, nurses moving quietly between rooms, voices kept low out of habit more than necessity. My assigned area was the older wing of the building, partially closed for renovations. Patients weren't supposed to be there anymore, just empty rooms, old equipment, and hallways that smelled faintly of disinfectant and dust. I liked the work. It was quiet, repetitive, and predictable. At night, predictability mattered. Around 2:20 a.m., while mopping the end of a long corridor, I heard a call bell ring. It echoed sharply, cutting through the silence. I froze. According to the schedule, every room in that wing was empty. I checked my clipboard, then the door numbers along the hallway. The bell rang again. Room 317. I stood there for a full minute, telling myself it was a wiring issue, something left over from before the wing was shut down. Still, policy said I had to report it. I picked up the wall phone and called the nurses' station. They checked their system and told me the same thing I already knew. No patients assigned to that wing, no active call lights. I decided to check the room myself. The closer I got to room 317, the colder the hallway felt. Not dramatically colder, just enough to notice, like stepping into a shadow. The call bell stopped ringing as soon as I reached the door. I hesitated, then pushed it open. The room was empty. No bed, no monitors, just pale walls and an old chair in the corner that hadn't been there earlier in the night. I stood there, listening, when I heard breathing. Slow, shallow, coming from behind the wall near the head of where the bed should have been. I backed out immediately and shut the door. On my way back down the hall, more call lights started going off, one by one, different rooms, different tones.
The sound overlapped until it became overwhelming, echoing through the wing like an alarm meant for no one. I called the nurses' station again, my voice shaking this time. They told me none of it was registering on their end. No alerts, no system errors, nothing. Then the overhead speaker crackled to life. Environmental Services to room 317. That was my department, my job. But no one should have been paging me there, especially not by room number. I looked up at the speaker, heart pounding, and that's when the call bell stopped all at once. The silence afterward was worse, thick, pressing. I turned to leave, only to see someone standing at the far end of the corridor, a patient gown, bare feet, head tilted slightly like they were studying me. The lights above them flickered, and for just a second, I could see straight through their body, the hallway visible behind them. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached the main wing, nearly colliding with a nurse who stared at me like I'd lost my mind. I quit that night, didn't give notice, didn't go back for my things. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me, and I asked someone who still worked there about room 317. They went quiet. Then they told me that room had been sealed years ago after a patient died alone during a night shift. Call bell malfunctioned, alarms never triggered, and no one checked on them until morning. Since then, anyone assigned to the old wing reported the same thing: call bells, overhead pages, and the feeling that someone was waiting for help that never came.